Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Copyright Compliance Made Easy with Reuse Insights. We're really glad that you've joined us today to learn this powerful tool and how it can help your organization stay copyright compliant. We'll give people just another moment to join in. But first of all, as well, Happy New Year. We hope you all started good in the new year and had wonderful holidays and the holiday season. And yeah, same for you, Chris and Pete. Did you have a good start in the new year?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so far so good.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, nice holiday break, which was good, and kind of back up and running.
Awesome. Yes.
Yeah.
I think we're all eager to get 2023 started.
Yes.
Shall it be a successful one?
Yeah. Agreed.
11 days in and I haven't broken any resolutions yet. Usually I try to make them.
Plus 12 days in? Yeah, today's the
12
12th. So
12.
it's still early for you. Awesome. So I see quite a lot of people have already joined. If you just joined, thank you for joining and welcome to this webinar, Copyright Compliance Made Easy with Reuse Insights. Reuse Insights is an add-on to Article Galaxy and provides a simple way for researchers to search and filter by copyright information, so you instantly know if it's safe or not to use. So no more fielding questions from users, deciphering complex licensing agreements, or worrying about inadvertently putting your organization at risk. My name is Julia Heeson. I'm the Senior Growth Marketing Manager here at Research Solutions, and I'll be moderating our conversation today. Today's presenters are Chris Atwood, VP of Product Development, and Pete Dunning, Director of Customer Success here at Research Solutions. Welcome to our expert panelists. A couple of housekeeping items today. You might already know these. You're in listen-in mode, so you don't have to worry about any background noise. To ask a question, you can use the Q&A feature. So on the Zoom bar, if you're not familiar, if you click on Q&A, you can add your questions there as they come up. We'll have dedicated time to get to all of those and answer them at the end of the conversation. But so you don't lose track of your questions, feel free to add them in there as they come up. And just in case you have to run earlier, we'll be sending out the recording post-event as well. So what we'll be covering today, table of contents, we'll start off by introducing Research Solutions for the ones of you that aren't familiar with us yet. Then our expert panelists will provide an overview of the features and benefits of Reuse Insights and walk us through why there's not one source of truth, but many. In the end, we'll have dedicated time for the Q&A, as I mentioned, so you can get all of your questions answered. So a little bit about Research Solutions for the ones of you that aren't familiar yet. Founded in 2006, Research Solutions provides solutions that simplify and streamline how organizations discover, acquire, and manage scientific articles and data. We're a pioneer in providing seamless access to scientific content and knowledge management, saving time and money, and accelerating research. More than 70% of the world's top pharmaceutical companies, emerging life science firms, and other R&D-driven companies rely on us for one-click access to scientific literature delivered within seconds right into the user's inbox. We also recently added Curedatis to the Research Solutions product family. Curedatis is a rapid literature review platform for the life sciences industry. So with that being said, we look forward to an interesting and informative session, and I'll hand over to Pete Dunning.
Okay, thank you, Julia. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, depending on where you may be located today. My name is Pete Dunning. As Julia said, I'm the Director of Customer Success here at Reprint's desk. I do still manage a few key accounts today and have some close relationships with some customers, but my primary role is to oversee and supervise the team of account managers that help our customers today. Along with our wonderful customer support team that operates 24/7, my main job and objective is essentially to keep our customers happy. And I think our customers and potential customers will be very happy with what they have to see here today. Today, we're going to be talking about our Reuse Insights and how it can assist your company with being a good copyright citizen and staying compliant. Whether you want to simply look up an article to find your reuse rights, or if you want your document delivery or your PDF library to be integrated with reuse rights, we have all of those options available for you, and you're going to see those today. Copyright compliance can be kind of a confusing and often frustrating topic for end users and researchers, but also even admins and librarians. Article Galaxy is designed to make you and your users life easier with document delivery, and we intend to do that regarding reuse as well. We can do this by providing reuse insights in the same account that users also acquire and manage the content they need, providing everything that they need in one place. The beauty of Article Galaxy Reuse Insights is that we consider many sources of truth. We will display your rights, considering what the publisher supplied data is. But we're also going to consider customer supplied, which is you, customer supplied licensing data. This takes into account any rights that you might have negotiated with publishers through direct agreements, such as subscription packages. We also take into consideration open access and Creative Commons licenses. This is often a confusing area to people because although your reuse license that you have might not directly address some open access publications, you will quite often have, and most often have, reuse rights for those publications that come directly from the publisher. So we consider that. And of course, we can integrate with your reproduction rights organization of choice, such as our friends over at the Copyright Clearance Center, and of course, the Copyright Licensing Agency, to name a couple. So that's the exciting news. Now let's see how the tool, and let's see how it works. So I want to pass things over to Chris Atwood, as Julia mentioned, is our VP of Product and Engineering, to get a demo of this awesome product. After the demo, there's going to be plenty of time for us to answer your questions. So as you have questions, as you think of questions, please type them in the chat as we go along, and we will get to those before the end of the demo. All right, over to you, Chris.
Great. Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Julia. As the two already mentioned, my name's Chris Atwood. I head up our product here, Article Galaxy. And really, my responsibilities are kind of all the things that interact and happen within our platform today. I appreciate all of you joining us this morning, this afternoon, wherever you might be in the world. Really what I'm going to do in the next 15, 20 minutes is introduce you to all the things that really Pete and Julia just mentioned. I'll walk you through the platform, the product itself. We'll take a look at a few different examples. We'll really also look at different ways our reuse rights integrate within the tools that we offer today. So we'll take a look at some of those things. And then I'll hand it back over to Julia, and we'll leave some time for questions. We'll keep things up so you can look at things. We'll dive in deeper. I think we'll have quite a bit of time really to review some of these things if there are questions and that sort of thing. So with that said, let me bring up Article Galaxy. And really before I dive into the details here, we have some attendees today that may not be familiar with Article Galaxy, may not be familiar with our platform, our company. So I'll give just a few second kind of background on who we are, what we do, and then also a little bit of the lay of the land here for Article Galaxy. Julia mentioned already earlier on this call that really what we do as a company is we focus around the discovery, the acquisition, and the management of scientific literature. And that's really what our Article Galaxy platform does. It helps users find content, find those articles they need, acquire them in the most efficient manner. We'll look at some examples of what I mean by efficient manner. And then also managing that literature. We'll actually look at some of that today, what the management looks like, and really how Reuse Insights helps with the management of that literature, giving users more power, more information about how they can reuse content, keeping organizations compliant, things like that. So we'll take a look at that as I walk you guys through this platform. What you see on my screen is a common configuration we have for Article Galaxy. So you see a menu on the left-hand side with some different options and some different places that users can go. In the center, we're really focusing around users searching for articles and finding literature they need. And then on the right-hand side is a resources section that's actually customizable by each account. So once again, the focus is on helping users find literature, acquire that stuff, and manage that. So for those of you that haven't seen our platform that might be new to Article Galaxy, this gives you a little bit of the lay of the land. We're going to kind of go through some of these menu items today, but really focusing around the reuse rights, the reuse insights, reuse rights in UI and how it works, and then also how it integrates throughout our system. So let me kind of click on this menu item. Let me talk a little bit about what's on the screen. And then, let me, before I show some examples and talk about the details, let me reiterate, we were showing a slide earlier that showed 4 points on there, and Pete was talking about things like publisher supplied license data. Where does this information come from to do things like showing reuse rights? So we have publishers supplying information to us, telling us what licenses cover which content for reuse. Customers, people like you, also have the direct agreements with publishers for your own licensing information. So a good example is you might have a subscription to a publication and it comes with additional rights. I'm going to talk about that, and I'm going to show that in an example as well in a few minutes. But often when you get those subscriptions or those agreements with publishers, you'll get extra rights to do things like submit articles for medical affairs purposes, where maybe those rights don't come automatic through a license that you have directly with a reproduction rights organization, like maybe the Copyright Clearance Center or the CLA. I'll talk about that and I'll show that. Our reuse insights UI it's an agnostic system. It's really designed to bring all of your sources, all of the data into a single unified place where you can have really this single source of truth. And that's what we often talk about. I'm also going to talk a little bit about open access and what does that mean and how does that work in this system and why is that important? I'll show you some examples and we'll talk about how our open access information lives in this system and how that can work for users as well. And then we'll also look at some integrations we have with some of our partners. Pete mentioned this earlier, like the Copyright Clearance Center. We also do some integrations with the Copyright Licensing Agency out of the UK. So we'll talk about some of that. I'll show some examples as well. Common use cases for reuse kind of checking and this reuse insights is, for people in your organization, it might be like a regulatory person who needs to look up, oh, can I submit this article to a regulatory agency? And they need to look up those rights. They want to make sure they're covered and everything's done correctly. Another good example is someone in medical affairs needing to look up an article to see if they can distribute that to whatever agency it might be or healthcare professional. So those are common use cases. There's definitely lots of others. I'm going to talk about and show some examples throughout this, but another example that might be less common, or maybe it's common for you, is marketing professionals in your organization at times need to look up how they can reuse an article, and can they do things like display portions of that article in a presentation to an audience. And Reuse Insights will be able to show that information for these groups of people in your organization. So I'll walk through some of this, but I want to give you a little bit of the lay of the land before I just start diving into examples and that sort of stuff. The tool's really designed to give users power and show them how they can, and even sometimes how they can't use content, in a really in a copyright compliant sort of a manner. So with that said, the UI is pretty simple. It's designed to be simple. It literally on this page is saying, hey, take a look for a publication. You can look up by a publication name, a standard number, ISSN, DOI, PubMed. We'll look at some of those examples. But a user can come to this UI, they can start typing in things like a journal. So in this case, Nature Biotechnology, whatever it might be. The system will start queuing them for publications and say, which one do you want? They can do things like select that and then check the reuse rights of that publication. You can also do things like copy and paste the standard number. So for those of you that are familiar with things like ISSNs, that sort of stuff, you can copy and paste an ISSN and look up that reuse right. That's pretty common. That's pretty standard. But a lot of times users just have things like a DOI. They have an article and they want to look up that article. They want to know, how can I use this for this purpose or not? So this system is really designed to do all these things. But I think the most useful data people will get is by entering a DOI or a PubMed ID. And I'll show you really a few different examples of how this system works with DOIs and PubMed IDs. A user can just take a DOI to an article, place it into this UI, and then click the check reuse rights piece. And I know I've kind of spent some time talking about really what we've been leading up to, but I think it's helping kind of to set the stage to this. What you see on my screen is the actual article. I pasted in that DOI, the article of interest to the user. So this article has to do with peanut allergy. That's just a topic that I often search when I'm doing demonstrations. But the idea is a user might look up that article. It'll give them some information about their company and then the time that they're checking and who the publisher is. And then just below that is really probably the most important section to the user is how can this article be reused based on your license, these different integrations we've been talking about. So integrations with a reuse license or direct publisher agreements or those open access pieces that we've been talking about. And you'll see some language listed here like use for myself or share a single copy for unsolicited medical affairs. This language is customizable by account, so it can be used really how any organization wants it. This is kind of generic language that we use to kind of showcase and demo this, but the concepts hopefully ring true. There also can be additional intended uses that some organizations want to have, like, oh, save a copy or store a copy for whatever purpose. Those are often intended uses in place. So just keep in mind what you see here is some generic language. This can be customized for your organization, and that's done with intent. So just note that. Users also will have the ability to communicate with the research solutions staff. So if there's a question or a problem, or I'm not sure, I need to use it for this purpose, they can fill this little box out, request more information. That's key. That's really important. We have staff working 24/7 to help answer these questions. So keep that in mind, because sometimes there are these edge cases or these things that maybe don't always fit into the box up above. We have staff that this is what they do. They're professionals. They know this stuff. They can help answer those questions. You'll also see some details up here about emailing and printing these results. This is also very important because users will come here and they'll say, oh, okay, I can use this for a submission to a regulatory authority. And they may want to do something like email these results to themselves. They click this button, it'll send an email to them directly. We know who the user is when they log into our system. So if they click the email, it says email sent. They'll get the details of the results. They can also print this page. I'll kind of show this just to give a quick idea. They can print this page and then save this information to their computer or to a database that they might need to. I know often people that are doing literature reviews or working in regulatory affairs need to save this information to know that, okay, at the time that I requested this, those rights were granted, save it, keep it in place, should there be any audits, things like that. So that's a useful piece as well. Users will also see information for doing things like ordering an article if they want to. So, here we see these intended uses. If a user selects an item, they'll see the option to buy or maybe rent the article, depending on their need. Often users are coming here and just saying, I need to see how I can reuse this. I already have the article, but we really focus around helping users discover, acquire, and then manage that content. So we really wanted to make sure if someone needs an article, they can get to that. This is just an example of, some random pricing. It's not necessarily the pricing information, but the idea is that users can get to that content if they need a copy of it. With that said, that's also a piece that we really utilize in helping users and organizations stay compliant. So when maybe a reuse isn't allowed for a particular article, what we often will show is that article can be used to do things like share a single copy outside the organization if the user makes another purchase of the article. So an individual purchase of that article, you can get that right by purchasing it again and then sharing a single copy outside your company. So you'll see that as some of these examples as I walk through this system. So you'll also note that some items have this little I indication, and that I indication means that terms apply. This is part of that next level integration that we have with some third parties, for example, the Copyright Clearance Center, that will show additional detail to users on how they can or maybe how they can't use content. And a really good example is for this article, I want to display it in a presentation to an external audience. We hear often that marketing groups need to do things like that because the article maybe really does support the drug or the product or whatever it might be that they want to showcase. But sometimes terms come with that right. So this case, it is granted. And then if we look at those terms, it's granted, but it's only granted for audiences that are less than 100 attendees. So you'll see these things in here, and then maybe the user says, well, I have more than 100 attendees. What do I do? That's where this request information piece comes in. That's where we can help users get to the next level or get the answers and the information that they need. The publisher or the agreement may allow that use to a certain degree, and maybe the user needs to go a little bit farther than that. So really that information can reach out to us. We can help with that. Most of the time, 95, 98% of the time, the results are right there. The user has what they need and they're on their way. So I want to talk about a couple other examples. I've kind of given you the lay of the land and a few scenarios and how things play out. But I do want to show you a few other examples. Many of you probably on this call, your organization has subscriptions to certain content. Maybe it's a specific journal or set of journals, things like that. The Reuse Insights UI is designed to work with all of that. So this is just an example of an item from the Lancet. If I select this item, we'll see that it knows I have a subscription. So if I do want to know the reuse rights, but I also want to get the article Galaxy layers in all that detail and says, okay, yep, here's how you get it. Here's, get it from your subscriptions through this link. I do want to note that, it also will make changes and adjustments based on using things for an external distribution. It makes those adjustments and says you can't, if you need a copy outside your company, you need to buy it. You need to pay that royalty to do that purchase. So this system is smart. It's designed to look at all that sort of stuff to make sure we keep the user and the organization compliant and really keep things in check. Let me show a couple other things. I keep talking about these different points of integration. So we're talking about, data from publishers, data from, your direct publisher agreements. And then we've been mentioning open access and, why is that important and how does that work in the reuse rights UI here? So this is an article from Plus One, if you're familiar with that. And Article Galaxy has layered in a huge amount of open access content. Much of this content is freely available to use, really for any purpose, as long as that article is maintained in its, current state and things like that. Plus One content's a really good example of that. But a lot of open access content is not part of licenses that organizations have. So it falls outside of a license, like maybe with a third party. It could be something like the Copyright Clearance Center or the Copyright Licensing Agency. That open access content falls outside of that. So users don't have a great way to know how they can reuse open access content. For most of us, we might say, well, it's open access, we can just use it. but users don't always understand that. And so then they sometimes get confused, and then they reach out to people internally and say, hey, I can't figure out what to do with this article. I don't know. Is it okay? And then it's kind of like, oh, of course it's okay. It's open access. Article Galaxy layers all that in and gives that information to the user. So it's really building on that theme of we're bringing all of these sources into a single place to give users all that information, really in minimizing, additional communication internally, things like that. So a couple other examples just to walk you through. I mentioned organizations, probably many of you are familiar with this. You might have a direct publisher agreement, and I'll show you this article. It's from the New England Journal of Medicine. This article, or really this publication, New England Journal of Medicine, is one of those where the publisher does not automatically grant through licenses the ability to reuse content for medical affairs purposes. It's not an automated granting thing with a license. But often, and many of you may be familiar with this, often when you get a subscription or you have a license agreement with this publisher, it'll include the ability to utilize articles for medical affairs purposes. So Article Galaxy can layer that information in, making this right a granted right, where normally it wouldn't be a granted right. So that, I don't want to confuse anything there. What I really want to highlight is you may have some subscriptions, you may have some agreements with publishers that you may not know about, or maybe you do know about. Article Galaxy's reuse insights can layer all that data in and be that single source for your users to see just exactly how the content can be used, really with bringing in all those pieces. So those direct license agreements, your publisher agreements, open access, all of that stuff in a single place. A couple other examples I'll walk you through just to give you some more detail about how this tool works. Some content you may actually already own in your system. You may have a PDF library with us, or your users may have those libraries. The system will look that information up automatically, and users will be able to request that content from their PDF library if it's available. Keep in mind, the system's smart. It says, hey, if you want to get the copy from your PDF library, that's okay. But if you need to use it for external purposes, there's a cost to that. A single use outside your company, there's a cost to do that. So it does that intentionally. It does that in a smart way to really keep you guys covered, to keep things really in good check and balances and that sort of thing. So one last example, and then I'll talk a little bit about some of the integrations with these reuse information. This is really just another example of an item, and this is one where you may say, this is different than what we've been looking at, and I wonder what that means. This is just a more obscure journal that's not covered by licenses. It's just something that it kind of falls out of licenses. It falls out probably of a direct publisher agreement, things like that. What you see in the results though below is really what we're saying here is we're saying the reuse of this article is not granted. You can't reuse it without paying for it again. So in the case of this article, if you had a copy in your hands and you say, yeah, but I need to submit a copy to a regulatory authority, you can reorder that article for that single purpose, and then you're covered for that single use. So this is where Article Galaxy and the reuse insights is layering in this information and giving the power to the user. And that has to do with the ability for us to get that article, pay that royalty, and cover your organization. So you'll see in many cases, things like reuse may not be available or may not be granted, but what you can do is purchase a copy of that article, a single copy for a single use, and then you're covered. There are times where you'll see things like display in a presentation or other intended uses not granted. And that would make sense because the rights aren't there and you can't display an article to a huge audience and then just pay a single royalty. It doesn't work like that. But a user may say, I need to take this article. I do need to display it. That's where this piece comes in, and we can help users, we can help organizations get those rights or see if it's even possible to get those rights. So lots of stuff I've shown you, lots of examples, probably took more time than I anticipated on that, but hopefully it gives you some good idea about how a user might come to our Reuse Insights UI and look up content. But what I really want to showcase in the next step is users don't necessarily do that. They don't necessarily have an article in hand and then come to the Reuse UI and say, okay, let me look this one up next. Let me look this one up. What they do is they often will be, doing things like ordering articles, or they'll be managing literature, which I'll show you in a second. But during the order process, so if the Reuse Insights is licensed with us during the ordering process, the user might put in a DOI to find an article. And most of you are probably familiar with this process. This is the process where a user can buy an article within Article Galaxy or acquire an article. It could be a subscription, it could be a token or something like that, if you're familiar with those. But users often come to Article Galaxy, and this is in many cases the first point they see. They see this citation, they know this is the article that they want, and then we might show some pricing information or whatever it might be. But what you'll notice that's new, and what I'm showing you here versus maybe what your account does today, is there's a new section, a new tab for reuse rights. So at the point that the user says, you know what, I do want to get this article, they'll be able to click this tab and see how they can reuse this article should they need to reuse it in the future. So it's living, so our reuse information is living with the user pretty much every place they interact in Article Galaxy. I'll show you some other points as well. But at that point of acquiring the article, they can check these reuse rights and say, well, I do need a copy for myself, but I also need a copy to submit to a regulatory authority. And then they can see that information. You'll also see the reuse information, or users will, when they're doing a search on the platform. So if they're just searching for keywords and they're looking for articles, this is my favorite, most common search, but they'll see an integration during the search process. So you'll see that there's a button that says check reuse rights. This button, this icon and text lives throughout the system. So a user can click this, maybe they're interested in this article, they can click this and see how they can reuse that information should they acquire the article or should they need to. So they'll see this really throughout the system. This sort of stuff lives in our company PDF library. So if you have a company PDF library, you'll see that there's reuse integrated in the user's order history. So you'll see, users will see that throughout their journey within the system when they're discovering content, when they're acquiring that content. And then for those of you that are either familiar with our references product or maybe you haven't seen it, this is our newest release product, and it really continues that theme that I keep mentioning, find articles, acquire articles, and manage. And a lot of the manage piece lives in Article Galaxy references. But I want to highlight this because, this tool is really about a system, a place where users can do things like find articles that their company may already own. So that's what we're kind of showing a list of items here. But just below that is a section of the users folders, and then these might be shared folders. So Pete and Julia and I might share folders for projects we're working on. So just to give you a real quick lay of the land there, but what I really want to showcase is that when users are organizing content into folders, so they put 10, 15 items, whatever they have in a folder, they can select those items. They can see citation information, abstract detail, other things. But the key thing that I want to point out that's related to this is they can also check their reuse rights right in the same place that they're organizing their literature and places where they're collaborating around that literature. So maybe I create a folder and say, I need to get all these articles processed and ready to be sent to, whatever regulatory authority. Okay, let me do my checks, make sure everything's covered and, everything is, as it's supposed to be. All that can happen within these systems and within this button here. So, that's a really kind of a brief kind of overview of some of the places that all of this reuse information is integrated. The key takeaway here is this is a great tool for a single unified place where users can come to see how they can legally reuse that content. It brings in all of those sources that we keep mentioning. It's that single place for users to get all the information that they need to keep organizations compliant. So I think that gives you a good idea. I'm going to hand it now back to Julia. She's going to, give you a little bit more information, and then we'll leave some time for Q&A. I'll keep this up if we need to come back, to this and answer any specific questions. So let me bring back up the PowerPoint, and then I will hand it back over to Julia.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris.
Yeah.
So some of you might be wondering if you want to learn more, what are the next steps? And as Chris mentioned, we'll have right in a second, we'll dive right into your questions. I saw there are many already there, so really excited to get into that. So just kind of want to tackle next steps first. If you already have an account with us, feel free to reach out to your account manager to learn more, or if you don't know who your account manager is, we just added in the chat the customer support email, so you can also reach out to customer support and get further information, further questions answered, or just learn how to add reuse insights to your Article Galaxy account. For the ones that aren't customers yet, feel free to go ahead and book a call with our specialists. You can schedule another demonstration or just some additional time to learn more about Article Galaxy and its add-ons that are available for you. And also for this, we just added the link to book a call with our specialists in the chats here. So feel free to do either of those two. Also, the email that you received, the confirmation email, and with the link to join the webinar, that's actually me and my colleagues behind it. So you can also always feel free to hit reply to the emails, and we'll make sure to get back to you or point you into the right direction. Now, moving on to the next slide. This is something I'm, just one before, thank you. This is something I'm especially excited to tell you about. Researcher Live is coming very soon. We're about to launch Researcher Live, which will be our series of thought leadership webinars. Here you'll have the chance to explore a variety of topics across industries such as pharma, biotech, medical devices, and healthcare with leading experts in their respective fields. Be prepared to dive deep into discussions that cover the latest trends and technologies affecting today's research landscape. Our goal is to provide an open platform for knowledge exchange while also inspiring new ideas that can help shape the future of research. If you're interested in becoming a speaker, please feel free to reach out to us using either link, hitting reply to the email, or if you're not interested in becoming a speaker, but you're interested in participating, stay tuned. We'll keep following up on social media and via email. So keep your eyes open. We're about to send the registration link so you can join here. Now, ready for all of your questions. Let's dive right in. So the first question is, within my Article Galaxy platform, I cannot find the reuse insights point on the left-hand side. I can only find home, order form, and my orders. Can I add it? I think, Pete, you're probably best to answer this.
Yes, absolutely. The screen that you were seeing that Chris was showing and working out of, this was a demo account that pretty much has all of our features on it and loaded. Some of your accounts might not have all of these features that you saw on the screen, such as the reuse insights or the Article Galaxy references tool. If you're interested in adding those, please reach out to your account manager ASAP. Again, if you don't know who your account manager is, you can reach out to our customer support. The link for customer support has been provided in the chat, so you can contact them as well to find out who your account manager is and who you need to speak to. But we can definitely get those added. It just depends on how your account is configured and licensed today, but all of these accounts are fluid and we can make changes and additions. So reach out to your account manager.
Awesome, great. The next question is, are you saying that a graph or table from a given article can be used in an external scientific meeting with no further copyright request to publisher?
Yeah, so that's literally, I showed an example of an item that I forget the exact language, but the ability to present to an external audience. In the case of the example I showed, it said that that right is granted as long as the audience is less than 100. So that is an example where that is allowed. So you could take pieces from a publication and utilize that information to present to an external audience. Now that license information, the information that I showed, it comes directly from a license, a reproduction rights organization license. So think in this case, what we're really talking about is a Copyright Clearance Center license, which has allowed that right. So that right would be allowed based on the customer having that particular license. But keep in mind, publications that might be open access, that right would be granted automatic because it is open access and you're allowed to do things like that. This is a fantastic question. And these are the kinds of questions that are really good to talk to your account manager about as well, because sometimes it can be a very confusing process. And, copyright is in itself confusing. And, there's lots of things that we can help answer.
Great. Thank you, Chris, for providing
Yeah.
that answer. So the next question is, what does rent an article mean? If we want to keep it or share it, do we have to go back and buy it?
Yeah, so for those of you that may not have rentals enabled on your account, Article Galaxy has the ability to rent articles. Rentals are designed as a single use for a single person, and they have an expiration date. So, rentals in the example that I showed might not have as much value in terms of reuse and really a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. Because rentals aren't something that you would reuse. But you might say, I had this rental and I'm just wondering if I own the PDF, could I reuse it? That could be a use case. A lot of organizations do have rentals enabled on their account because they're not always sure if they really need the article. And that can be a good reason or a good way to get a preview at a much lower cost and then say, oh, you know what? I do need that article. And then you could upgrade that rental and the cost of the rental goes away. So rentals and reuse, they don't really have a whole heck of a lot to do with each other, but rentals in themselves have a really great use case for a lot of users. So I hope that answers the question.
Great. The next question is very interesting as well. How is the Article Galaxy Reuse Insights different than me just going to my license today and looking up things?
Yeah, this is a fantastic question, and we often get asked this, and there's a lot of layers to how it's different and why it's different and why it can do more. And a few ways to answer this is ultimately, if you're familiar with the process of going to your license directly, it's another platform to go to. So users of Article Galaxy are already in Article Galaxy. They acquire their content there. They manage their content there. So going to another tool, it's another place to log in or access or get access to, and then re-look things up. So by having all this in Article Galaxy, you don't have to go outside of that. That reuse information is right where you're at when you're managing content, when you're acquiring content. So that's a key thing. Also, we talked a lot about the multiple sources. The system is agnostic. We don't care where your reuse data comes from. We just want to help the users get the knowledge that they need. So you might have a license with somebody like the Copyright Clearance Center. We can bring that data into our system. So that will come in automatic, but we're also going to layer in open access content. We're also going to layer in any direct publisher agreements you might have. So it really is this unified source to give the whole truth to users, because there can be multiple sources. So there's a whole lot of ways to answer that, but there's a lot of good value in keeping the user in Article Galaxy and giving them all the tools in that single place. but great question.
Oh yeah, great question. Thanks for the answer. Are rights provided on the journal or article basis?
Yeah, another good question, and really, this question is related to the complexities of, I think, copyright and publishers and all that. As a general statement, the rights are granted at the publisher and or publication level. So think, journals like New England Journal of Medicine, Nature, that sort of stuff. Those rights live from the publisher, typically down to the publication, not so much at the article level. That being said, a lot of content is being published open access. Open access in itself is a very complex world and process. So those of you that are familiar with open access probably know all the different flavors of open access. This is where Article Galaxy shines. This is where we have done so much work in this area to keep companies, users compliant. But keep in mind, an open access article might have a certain designation that says, you can reuse it for whatever purpose, as long as you keep the integrity of the article in place. So, there's different ways it works, but typically reuse lives at the publisher publication level.
Awesome. If specific rights has been obtained from publisher or CCC for a specific article, can and how those rights be added?
Yeah, so we have a whole back end to how that information gets loaded. We have an kind of an onboarding process to this, and Pete was speaking to this earlier with a different question. I don't see this on my account, and the reason is because each account's unique. These things need to be configured, they need to be set up. So we would go through an onboarding process that's not that complicated, but we would have a discussion with you to get all of those pieces put in place, and then we get this enabled on your account. So yeah, good question.
Awesome. If my company were to license this, is this tool something that our team could be trained on?
Yeah, great question. And Pete, I think I'll turn it to you on this because I think this is more in your realm.
Yeah, absolutely. As Chris said, if this is something that you want to license, during the onboarding process, we're going to talk about the specifics, how this should be implemented, how it should be displayed to your users. But we will also fully support and train users. We will support with, marketing collateral, quick PDFs, reference guides that users can use. But we will also do live trainings. We'll do multiple trainings, different time zones, whatever suits your users best. But this is something that your account manager will handle once implemented. So we will absolutely support you there. And it's not just an onboard training and then that's it, it's yours. We will support you throughout the years with refresher trainings as new colleagues, new employees come on as well. So absolutely. And we can record those trainings too and make those videos available to you to share internally, and also even post a link to in your account so people can revisit.
Awesome. Thank you, Pete. How are items listed under Creative Commons Attribution, non-commercial license, CC by NC displayed? I hope I got that right.
Yeah, no, you got it right. And this is exactly kind of what I keep referring to about the complexities of it. All these complexities are handled in the back end with the design making it easy for the user, the person interacting with the system, to understand, okay, how can I use it? How is all of that handled when an article is a CC BY NC? We've done all the legwork on all of this. So we know all that, we have that information in place. But also keep in mind that a lot of that CC BY NC content lives within a publication like The Lancet or New England Journal of Medicine. And because of that, licenses, your agreements already have built-in reuse to that particular publication. So this could be a complicated and a long discussion. We've done the homework on this. We're very familiar with all this. We have a lot of great relationships with publishers. If you want to know more about that, reach out to us. We can have a conversation. But it's a great question for those of you that are familiar with the complexities of open access and publishers and all that. We've done that homework. We're very familiar with it. would love to talk more.
Awesome. Pete, I think this one's for you. What are the costs for these services?
Yeah, that's a great question. Again, that's something that you'll want to take up with your account manager. You and your account manager can review your current licensing agreement, see what's in there. If it's not currently licensed, they can talk to you about, next steps and what's needed to get there. But it's not just a flat answer for everyone, because it will depend on your account license, your configuration, how many users you have. But that would be something to take up with your account manager.
Fair enough. Thank you. Is Article Galaxy References subscription needed for reuse rights or available to add for all AG users?
Yeah, great question. And to be honest, I kind of wasn't thinking along those lines when I was showing things, but the answer to that is it is available without Article Galaxy References. I mean, I think References is a great addition to a lot of organizations, and it does help users do things like manage that literature and stuff. But the reality is reuse insights, and that all the reuse stuff we showed is available without Article Galaxy References. Many organizations don't have references licensed. So, that piece would just not be on your account, but it is absolutely available.
Awesome. What if reuse insights isn't listed? How do my users know what to do?
Yeah, on most accounts, it wouldn't be enabled already for the reasons that, we've spoken about. I think we've also kind of addressed some stuff related to training. So absolutely, we do training. We can give out, reference guides, material, create these videos, that sort of stuff. But I also think that we've done a good job making this as intuitive as possible, meaning users will kind of figure some of these pieces out, because when they're in that process of ordering an article, they'll see reuse rights. They're checking their histories. They'll see, oh, there it is right there. Also, it is a key main menu item. So I think, reuse in itself is something that users would say, okay, yeah, that might be the place I go to look for things. But I think the key with anything is we support the processes, we support the onboarding, the training, all of that. And we'd be happy to do that sort of stuff when the time's right.
Great. Does Reprints Desk Research Solutions assist in getting quotes for permissions when not covered?
Yeah, so this is, for people that are very familiar with this process and reuse rights, sometimes there are things that just aren't covered. And what do we do? How does that work? We do assist in that process, and we do have some partners that help us with that sort of stuff. A lot of stuff is just covered, and it's immediately available for reuse. But there also might be these times where users or people in organizations say, yeah, I need to reuse the article, but I need to get multiple copies, maybe hundreds, maybe, dozens, things like that. And yes, we do help facilitate that. We have that box at the bottom that I showed that really people can submit and say, hey, I need this article, but I need it for this purpose and this many uses. How do I do that? That's where our staff and support comes in. It's not every single theoretical use is covered, because there's a lot of different use cases out there. But yes, is the answer.
Awesome. If API for reuse tool is purchased, will display of reuse rights on the Article Galaxy be included?
Boy, that question might need a little bit more. We might need a little more information to answer. We have a series of APIs for Article Galaxy to do a variety of things. So I think with this one, Pete, unless you understand it better, this might be a good one to follow up on. Maybe the way to answer it is yes, we do offer reuse information via our API and some integrations there. But I think we might need to follow up to understand the use case that needs more.
Yeah, I agree. This should be taken probably off the webinar in a more detailed conversation with your account manager. And again, if you don't know who your account manager is, please reach out to customer support and they can connect you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yes, please reach out to your account manager because this was an anonymous question. So, or send us in a private chat right here your email, and we can make sure to follow up as well. Cool. The next question is, my company has a CCC license and we used to use their tool for ordering documents. We're now using Article Galaxy, but the rights that are covered by our license are not shown. If we have a license and we use your tool, can we just link them together? What can I tell my colleagues they need to do to make this happen?
Yeah, I think, the best thing to do, as Pete has mentioned, is to reach out to your account manager. This stuff isn't necessarily just a turn on and go. It is in a lot of cases, but there might be more to the story. We might need to know more information and detail from you to get some things in place. Also think about those intended uses. They're often customized, and they'll say something like, for use within, my company, but listing your actual company name, or external distribution outside of company X. So those are the things that we do set up and we put in place. They go pretty quickly and we can get these things up and running fast. But we do need to talk to you to get this in place and licensed and all that. So I'd say just follow up with your account manager. Do as Pete said. If you don't know who that is, reach out to support and we'll get a conversation set up.
Awesome, thank you. And just a note here, we officially have 4 minutes left. So if you have to jump and you have questions that we didn't get to yet, feel free to send them either to your account manager, to customer support, hit reply to the email that you received about the webinar, and we'll take any questions offline and make sure all of them get answered. Chris and Pete, I know if you have like another 5 minutes to extend or you have to jump in for another call. So just want to double check here as well.
Yeah, I'm okay to stay on for sure. Anybody that's on the call as far as participants go, yeah, we'll absolutely follow up if we don't get through these questions.
Awesome, cool. Let's get going. A couple more minutes, and then yes, we'll follow up on any open questions. Is it possible to batch check that all references in AG references folders are covered, or is it necessary to check rights one by one?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's something that we are investigating. Right now, the checks are done one by one, but I think the batch check is something that it's on our radar for sure. Some moving parts to that to kind of make all that work for sure. But I love the question and I love the idea. It's something we are looking into. Not available yet, though.
Awesome. Can reuse rights be included in an Excel report? Not report, export, Excel export.
I think that's a great question. I don't think we've really given much consideration to that yet. I showed the option to do things like print those results and that sort of stuff, but I think for future development and future consideration, it's something we could definitely do. We don't have it today, but something we could definitely get on the roadmap.
Awesome. What about reuse or repurposing publication extenders?
Oh, I'm not sure exactly what is meant by extenders. Maybe that's another one we want to follow up on. It might mean things like supplementary material, that sort of stuff, but maybe we could follow up on that and learn more.
Totally. So whoever asked this question, if you could either drop us your email or reach out to us again, that would be awesome. Then we can take this offline. If the article says CC, BY, and C, do you tell the user that they are a commercial company and the open access does not include them?
Yeah, so this is all kind of back to the complexities of this whole thing and this whole CC, BY, and C. And if you're familiar with it, then you know what we're talking about when we use these acronyms. If you're not and you want to learn more, please let us know, because there's a lot of complexities to all of this. I think this is a good conversation to talk and have with a one-on-one conversation with whoever asked that. I think that's the first place to start. But, I want to mention that the CCBYNC, that designation for that article could live in a the article might live in a publication like New England Journal of Medicine, and you might have a license that covers reuse, even though that article says something like CCBYNC. So it's a complicated landscape. We can dive into these details. Some content is published by publishers with that designation. That's the only way it's published. We're handling all that. We can talk more on this and what does it mean and how do we do this, and we can get you those answers for sure. But I think it's better served on a one-on-one conversation than with the group here.
Great. How are PubMed central item author manuscripts items listed?
That's a great question, and there's a lot more content out there with author manuscripts and things like that. The reuse rights typically live with the publisher and at even at like the publication level, and these author manuscripts kind of fall in a weird sort of place. So I think as a general rule, they're probably not part of that because the publishers or the authors are owning those rights. But sometimes those articles are also like there's a publisher manuscript, and then there's also like the final version that is published in the journal. So your license may cover reuse of that article from the journal. So, it's the sort of stuff we might want to talk one-on-one as well. But that's a bit of a gray area because that content is typically owned by the author at the time.
Great, thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Would ad hoc rights purchased permissions for a specific article be added, or only subscription level CCC rights added?
We can add, these direct rights that you have. I think once again, these setups, they are things we want to have those one-on-one conversations with you to understand more and really learn those details and take those details and get them put into your account. But it's important to understand that those details can be put into your account. So let's follow up. Let's talk more about that with this person as well.
Great. So this is the last question we'll take here, also just to be aware and respectful of all of your time. So if we didn't get to your question yet again, feel free to reach out again. We'll follow up if you have your information. We'll make sure we get any open questions answered. Yeah. So diving into the last one here today, I was told by CCC there's a charge to check their rights if we use Article Galaxy. Does this mean we don't have to pay that charge?
I think this might be the most complicated question we've had. No, the last
way
one
to
always
stand.
is. So this question is a good one to have a one-on-one conversation about. Not everybody has a CCC license. There's other organizations. I mentioned the CLA. So CCC is a big player in the reuse world, in our entire world. As far as pricing with the CCC and all that, that's kind of up to them and that sort of thing, but they're a partner of ours, so we work with them. So to really answer this question, I think let's talk to your account manager. Let's get some of our people together with you, get these questions answered. Sometimes it involves communicating with them to understand, is there some additional cost or not? Bottom line is, I think it's best to talk to your account manager here, and then we can get those wheels moving.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Pete, for answering all these questions. Such good questions in here today.
Yeah,
so with that being, sorry.
No, I was just agreeing.
Awesome. Well, with that being said, thank you everyone for joining, for sticking around, for sharing all of your questions with us. We know copyrights compliance and reuse sites can be a little overwhelming, if that's the right word to use, but we're here to make it as easy and simple as possible for you. So feel free to reach out. Any open questions, reach out to your account managers. If you're not a customer yet, reach out over the researchsolutions.com/sales link. Let's get the conversation started, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day or evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Julia. Thanks, Chris.
Yep. Thanks, Julia.
Thanks, both of you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Pete.